What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom, and we have a recurring guest with us tonight. We got Connor, a.k.a. Pete's Picks on Twitter, a.k.a. The Locksmith. Connor, Tom, how are you guys tonight? Tom, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, Keith. I'm doing good. We got some sneaky good fights. I think you said that, not really one of your not one of the cards that you have looked forward to. Jesus, I am having a hard time talking. One of the cards that you haven't really looked forward to all that much, but I think over the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, I can convince you there's some sneaky good fights worth watching on this card.
Okay, maybe we'll be able to. We'll see about that. Connor, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Second time on the pod, so looking to make some money. I think I went 3-1 on the last iteration time I was on here. So looking to keep giving good picks for you guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you back. Second time definitely won't be the last time. Now, if you're watching the last episode, you might be saying to yourself, wow, Keith is wearing the same hat 2 times in a row. Yes, I am. That's because at the time of filming this, last night, Kevin Durant went crazy, played every minute of the game against the Bucks, had 49 points, helped my wallet out quite a bit. And being that Connor is the basketball guy over at pickinwinners.org, I figured it was only right to wear my Nets hat. Also, we did just form a new Instagram page for pickinwinners.org. That's _pickinwinners on Instagram, _pickinwinners on Twitter. And for Tom and I with Pickin Fights, that's just at Pickin Fights on Instagram. So with that being said, let's jump into this card. I have one prelim lock for you guys. It's not a mortal lock. It's more of a semi-lock, but it's a fight to look out for. And that's because we have a lot of young female fighters that are coming into the UFC right now, early 20s, that are really making a name for themselves. 2 of those are going to be fighting in the very first fight of the prelim card. And those will be Casey O'Neill coming in at plus 135 on most sites. That was our opening line. It looks like it's shifting around plus 100 versus Laura Procopio at like minus 120 just about. So I really like Casey O'Neill in this fight, and that's who I'm going with, and I'll tell you why. Casey O'Neill is younger, but not like significantly younger, right? Like Lara is coming in here at 25. Casey is coming in at 23. She was born in 1997. Me as a 97 born baby. That's part of the reason why I'm rocking with her here. Kind of silly, but got to ride with my 97 kids. Plus, Casey O'Neill does have 2 inches of height and reach over Lara. And O'Neill is on an 11-fight win streak since before entering the UFC. It's carrying over very well for her right now. She looks extremely confident, as opposed to Lara, who's on a 1-fight win streak. She lost her fight prior to that. Looks a little bit unsteady out there and unsure of herself. Casey O'Neill confident as ever. The biggest point that I want to make, and it's my last point, but I think it's a very significant point, is that Casey O'Neill trains at Extreme Couture. And we got to keep in mind some of the other fighters that have fought there over the years. We got legends like Forrest Griffin, Randy Couture, current fighters, Francis Ngannou, the current heavyweight champ, one of the baddest men in the world right now, and Miesha Tate, legendary all-time female fighter, looking to make a comeback currently. And there's also another fighter on this card, Dan Ige, who trains at Extreme Couture. So one thing you got to keep in mind is that this gym heavily prepares their fighters for their fights. They give them great game plans, extremely well thought out strategy, and they also really teach them how to use their power and use their abilities that they have coming naturally to them. Casey O'Neill has a lot of natural ability, and very young, it's very good that she's being molded and trained by a gym that's got such a legendary history. That's all I got for the prelims. I do think this is a fight to watch. I'll be watching this one. I'll be busy for the rest of the night later on, but I'll be tuning in for this prelim lock. Tom, do you have any prelim locks for us here, or what are you thinking?
Unfortunately, I don't have any prelim locks. However, there's a fight to watch because whenever this guy fights, you're always going to want to watch him fight. Chaos Williams taking on Matt Smelsberger. Smelsberger is a wrestler. It's your classic matchup of a guy who was good at getting takedowns and wrestling versus a guy who on the feet, the longer guy, he wants to strike and he wants to defend takedowns. I think Chaos Williams is probably the bigger name at this point. Being the striker, he's got the better reach advantage. I know that there's definitely a lot of people who would put money on Matt Smellsberger. That being said, I really am inclined to lean towards Chaos Williams. His last few fights, his last decision, it was a unanimous decision loss against Michael Pereira, but he did an okay job in that fight. Before that, wins over Abdul Razak Al Hassan, a TKO, Alex Morono, a TKO, Jeremy Holloway decision. I don't believe there's any relation. He won a decision there, and then another TKO over Bo Yan. That fight was about a year and 7 months ago. So good activity. He is going against Matt Smellsberger, who his last fight was 2 months ago. Was a KO over Jason Witt. Listen, Smellsberger can do it all. I just think Chaos is going to be able to land a punch before Smellsberger is able to take him down. Tapology has a lot of people betting on Chaos Williams as well. So I'm going to pick Chaos Williams, not necessarily a lock. I could see this one going the other way. It depends on what the odds are going to be at fight time. But definitely that's a fight you're going to want to watch that's on the prelim card.
Yeah, that is definitely a fight to watch. Me personally, when I see that the public is favoring Chaos Williams heavy, it says to me, maybe I want to fade the public and maybe go with Smellsberger. Haven't really decided which way I'm leaning with this one. But, you mentioned one of his most, at least in my mind, when you look at where this guy's gone since, impressive wins was against Alex Morono. You have Alex Morono, who's definitely made a name for himself at this point, beat Cowboy a few months ago. So I definitely am leaning towards Chaos Williams. Don't know which way I'm going to go, but the only way that you're going to get my last-minute picks is if you follow me on Twitter down here. Make sure you follow Tom and Connor, too. Tom's putting out a lot of great MMA content, and Connor is always tweeting about basketball and a wide variety of sports, so make sure you follow us on there. Before it gets too late into the video, I do want to mention you have to like and subscribe. It's not even an option at this point. You must like this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you're watching all of our videos, subscribe. That's a must do. It's not even an ask. It is a demand. Connor, how are you feeling about these picks from what you picked up from us? Casey O'Neill and potentially Chaos Williams.
I mean, I like Chaos Williams, sick nickname. That's my only reason for rocking with that. And Casey O'Neill, yeah, I like the story, your reasoning about her whole fight camp, the coaches and all that. So I'll be rocking with her as well. I have no knowledge of any of the fighters on this card other than Olenek, because I saw him, what'd you say, it was 261?
I think.
Something like that. But yeah, no, I'll be rocking with O'Neill and Chaos.
Okay. All right. Thanks for rolling with us there. So now we're going to jump into the main card. The very first fight on this main card is Diego Lima versus Matt Brown. Diego Lima coming in at -185. Matt Brown coming in at +160. I'm kind of feeling Diego Lima as a semi-lock. I really like him in this bout. My main reasoning here is we've seen this a lot in recent fights. When a fighter starts to hit their 40s, they start to decline quite a bit. Even the greats, we saw this with Tony Ferguson. We've seen this with Cowboy. We've seen this with a lot of guys over the past couple of weeks. And it is a trend I'm starting to notice, and I'm sure you are at home too. Then we have Diego Lima, who's coming in at 31 years old. Usually when these fighters who have had promising careers start to roll into their 30s, as long as they don't slip up and, wait too long to fight, 30 can be a prime for a lot of these guys. And I have a feeling, based on Diego Lima's last couple of fights, I think Diego Lima might be rolling into his prime. At -185, he's a good parlay booster here too, so I'll be adding him in there. But my reasons for that, this is going to be a huge stand-up on the feet fight because Lima has crazy takedown defense. And Matt Brown is kind of like losing his tenacity in the striking realm and has been going for a lot of sloppy takedowns recently. And Diego Lima, if this is a fight on their feet, I think Diego Lima has way better striking than Matt Brown. Now, I'm sure, Tom, I saw your face. He might tell me why I'm wrong. So, Tom, here's your turn to speak.
Listen, I don't know who's going to win this fight. I think it's just more of a pick'em fight than you're willing to say. I know I think you exclusively are looking at the age discrepancy as your main determination to win this fight. I mean, but you look at some of the people that Diego Lima has fought. He just lost to Bilal Muhammad. He lost a unanimous decision in which he was outstruck by 70 strikes. Before that, he has a win over Luke Jamiu, Court McGee, and Chad LaRossi. Have you heard those names before, Keith?
No, but I have heard of Bilal.
And then before that, he's got losses to Yushin Okami, Jesse Taylor, Li Jinglang, who we just fought and fight well, and Tim Means. And those are back to 2015 and 2017 and 2018. So he does, as of late, Diego Lima really hasn't shown us that he can beat anyone. Matt Brown, on the other hand, he's a guy who has a lot of experience in the octagon. His losses are to Carlos Condit and to Miguel Baeza. Miguel Baeza just had a really tough, hard-fought fight with Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's now at the top of that division. Carlos Condit coming on and looking good as of late. He has wins over Ben Saunders and Diego Sanchez in 2017, which was a much more accomplished and almost, pretty much there. Diego Sanchez. He lost to Donald Cerrone back in 2016. It was a much better Donald Cerrone. So, we've seen Matt Brown have TKO victories. We've seen him submit people. We've seen him, win decisions, lose decisions. He's been there, done that. He's also beaten Diego Lima's older brother, Douglas Lima, which is one of the top guys in the world still. Listen, I'm not picking Matt Brown, but I'm also not picking Diego Lima. I'm staying away from this fight as a bettor. Personally, I think Diego Lima probably does win, and I think age has to do with it. But I just want to, from my perspective, let everyone know that there's more to the story than just age here. There's a really, really accomplished fighter whose losses are to top-level guys here, even at 41. He would fought, back in January against Carlos Condit and lost a unanimous decision. But he's able to be in there with top guys like Carlos Condit and Miguel Baeza. So, that being said, I think you don't want to overlook Matt Brown just because of age. It's a pick-em fight at best for me.
Yeah, I kind of get your logic there, right? I definitely get your logic with this one. It does feel like a pick'em fight, but, you've said it yourself. There can only be one good sibling. Well, is Douglas that sibling, or is Douglas starting to slip a little bit? And is Diego starting to become that guy? Yeah, obviously he lost to Bilal Muhammad, but I think that this is also a setup for him, too, against a guy that has a reputation. We've seen this a lot lately. Older guys, well-known names. We saw this just last week with Bilal Muhammad going up against his name is escaping me now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who did Bilal Muhammad fight this past week? I can't even remember. Yes, Damian Maia, another guy in his 40s. Another great example of what's going on. These guys aren't Tom Brady. They can't keep fighting past 40 years old. And we're gonna see that later on in this card too. That's my personal take, but also. The age isn't the only reason. It also has to do with Douglas. Not Douglas. Diego Lima's takedown defense and Matt Brown's tendency to recently go for a lot of takedowns when he starts to, slip up in the striking realm. Those are my main reasons for going with Diego Lima there. Connor, what are you thinking? Are you gonna ride with me, or are you more like Tom here and kind of like not sure who's gonna win?
Let me explain. So, in the first time on the show and so far today, in listening to both of you guys speak, I kind of take my own little notes. So like a fighter here, fighter there, based on what I want to add to what my own card, whether it be UFC parlay or add to juice another NBA parlay that I might be putting together for that Saturday. So at first, as Keith was speaking, I'm thinking, all right, taking Diego Lima because the age factor and him being a bit younger is something that I've tended to notice like outside of listening to you guys here on Pickin' Fights. And I think it's something a lot of UFC bettors have been noticing throughout the world. Then as Tom was speaking, I'm like, all right, Diego Lima hasn't fought anybody. Matt Brown has a much better track record, and has fought a lot better quality opponents recently. So I kind of wavered, wrote down Diego Lima, then deleted that, was leaning towards Matt Brown. And now I'm leaning towards taking the younger guy here and going with Diego Lima.
Yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong with taking the younger guy in a lot of these fights. This one obviously is a lot closer, as Tom mentioned, but when you look at that age difference, it's a glaring issue and it's very tough to ignore.
from like a guy who I understand the sport at this point. I'm not as much of an expert as you two guys are. And like the age factor, like the guys are getting bashed in the head for years and years and years. So at some point the skull's going to be a little weaker, or they just can't take enough that much damage. We've seen guys in previous weeks, like dating back the last couple months, rebroken noses. That's something you got to watch out for. But just sustaining a lot of damage over the course of many years tends to not do well for you when you get above the age of 40.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that whatsoever. So we're going to move on to the next fight now. We have Bruno Silva versus Wellington Turman. Bruno Silva's coming in at plus 145, and Wellington Turman is minus 170, although it looks like maybe the public is starting to shift towards Wellington Turman, because as the days have gone on, those odds have shifted, and now Bruno Silva is the favorite here, minus 122. Wellington Turman coming in as an underdog at plus 102. Tom, I'll let you kick this one off. What do you think?
I was hoping you were going to kick this one off, Keith, but I'll go ahead and do it. This was one of the ones on the main card that I didn't research just as much. That being said, I'm looking at Topology right now. Topology, 82% of the 1,100 voters are riding with Silva, 81% of those by TKO, the other little bit coming by decision. Only 18% going with Turman, and 60% of that is by decision. So, maybe the betting people are going towards Wellington Turman. The people at home are going towards Bruno Silva. Who are you going to take? Tapology rates Bruno Silva as its number 92 middleweight worldwide, with Wellington Turman at number 43. Wellington Turman is coming off a loss to Andrew Sanchez via TKO. That was about 10 months ago. So almost a year ago was his last fight. And then a year and 6 months ago was his last win, which was unanimous decision over Marcus Perez. Before that, a loss to a name that you might know, Carl Robertson, via split decision. And, only 3 fights in the last 2 years or so. That's a little bit rough. And we'll compare that with Bruno Silva. His last fight was 2 years and 7 months ago against Artem Frolov. So a lot more activity for Wellington Turman. I think ring rust will definitely be a thing, especially when you're 31 ring rust versus a very young Wellington Turman. I think it's another pick on one for me. What do you think, Keith?
I'm kind of leaning towards Turman just because of the last 2 things that you mentioned there. Ring rust and age, those definitely will play a factor, especially when you're 31. If you're not fighting and you're not active for, almost 3 years, that's a really significant time to not be fighting for. And real quick, did you mention that Bruno Silva is the favorite on the website, or Wellington Turman?
On my website, on Tapology, I don't know how updated these are, but it says Bruno Silva is the minus 145 slight favorite.
I meant like who's the public favoriting right now?
The public is 82% betting, or at least voting, on Silva.
I like Turman here. I'm really rolling with Turman based on those 2 things. Ring rust, inactivity, and then I'm going to fade the public here, and I'm going to roll with a slight underdog with Wellington Turman. Not a lock by any means, just going to sprinkle a little bit on it and see what happens. But, I like these lines for Turman. I like that the public is taking Silva heavily. It really just makes me want to line up with and back Wellington Turman. Maybe they're getting confused and thinking Bruno Silva's like Anderson Silva or something like that when they're voting on this website, or, the axe murderer is making a comeback and they think it could be him. Who knows? But 3 years is a long time to go without fighting. Connor, what do you got for us there?
I mean, as you mentioned it, the 2 things I was thinking of: A, fade the public. B, that's a long time to not fight. And you might think that you wouldn't want, it would be good not taking that much damage in the last, 18 months or so. But also looking at OddsShark, their opening lines have Wellington Turman as the favorite at minus 170. I don't know how updated that is. So you just told me about the website before we hopped on. But I'd be going with Turman here just to fade the public, because generally that is the move, and that public doesn't know what the fuck they're betting on.
Yeah, it looks like they've shifted a little bit ever since everybody's going with Silva, and it's looking like Wellington is now a very, very slight underdog here. So there could be an opportunity to make some money on this one. But it is definitely more of a pick 'em fight. So the next one that we got up.
I just want the record to show that I'm also going Wellington Turman.
Oh,
But if I'm looking up the odds on FanDuel right now on that fight, give me one quick second. We got Wellington Turman at plus 126.
wow,
So
even more.
I'm thinking that's probably a good opportunity to win some money. Wellington Turman going to get up against a Bruno Silva, whose last fight was in 2018 in M1. So,
Yeah, I'm rolling with Wellington. Let the record show we are all going with Wellington Turman. Okay, so the next one we got up here, and I really hope I say his name correctly, Choi Seung Woo, coming in at minus 135 against Julian Erosa at plus 115. I think Julian Erosa is going to win this one. This is definitely a tough fight to pick. There's a lot of tough fights to pick on here. I will give you a lock here. This fight's probably going to be finished. I don't think it'll go to decision because when you look at Erosa's record, he's won 44% of his fights by knockout. He also has a couple of submission wins under his belt. And Choi enters with 56% by KO. You add those two together, it equals 100%. So there's definitely going to be some sort of finish in here. Obviously, that's not how math works, but, So Erosa is just as good on his feet as he is on the ground. We see that with his history of submissions. He's also never been submitted before. And you look at Choi, and Choi has no submission victories under his belt. I like Erosa's style here. He's very reminiscent of like an Anthony Pettis type of guy. He throws a lot of good kicks and like random knees in there while he's fighting. I'm kind of feeling a prop bet here, going to sprinkle a little bit on it. And just because of his history and because of Choi's seemingly weakness in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu realm, I'm going to roll with Julian Erosa to win straight up, but also as well as win by submission. I like that here. Tom, what do you got on this one?
yeah, this one's very tough. You have Julian Erosa. I mean, these guys are both strikers. I mean, Julian Erosa is slightly better on the ground, but I think neither one of them is going to option to go to the ground. So I think we're definitely going to see a stand-up fight here. Julian Erosa been in the UFC, I think, a little bit longer, and they both have generally the same amount of activity. Listen, Julian Erosa is kind of more of a striker, an unorthodox. Crazy striker. He has looping things, and Seung Choi is a little bit more direct. He throws a little bit more, of a popping jab, and he's a little bit more targeted. So that explains the discrepancy between the strikes thrown. He does have a little bit of a better defense. This is another tough fight. If you go, I really want to pick Julian Erosa too. This is a tough one. I'm really torn here. I'll go Julian Erosa to ride with you.
All right, man. That's another underdog coming in at plus 115. Do you still have Tapology up for us to see what the public's rolling with here?
Yeah, the public is also rolling with Julian Erosa, 69%. Nice. Half of that is by decision. Then the other 25% is by submission. The other 25% is by KO or TKO. Then you have Choi, who's pulling in 31% of the votes, 1,100 votes also. 68 say by decision, 25% TK. So it sounds like this fight should almost definitely go the distance if you're judging based off of how the public on Tapology is voting. So do with that information what you will as well.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, based on our last pick, the public is also incorrect in that aspect, and this does go the way that I want it to, and it's a finished fight. I think both of these guys have the ability to finish it. I just hope that Julian Erosa doesn't really telegraph those big looping strikes, because if he does, then Wu is going to go in there and just pop him with jabs the entire time. But I'm looking forward to seeing Erosa mix it up. You mentioned his unorthodox style. He really does have a weird way of just like throwing strikes in there, like random strikes, random elbows. It'll be like a left jab and a right elbow. And, it takes you back to the classic days of a young Anthony Pettis. So as a big Pettis guy, I like him here.
No, I hear you, man. I mean, listen, let's go through each of their fights. Julian Erosa, his last win was a TKO flying knee, 56 seconds into the first round over Nate Landwehr. Then before that, Sean Woodson, he had submitted him with a Darce choke in the third round, which shows, great endurance and a great submission game. he took advantage of it once the guy got a little tired. But that being said, great job to have the energy and the stamina management to be able to submit a Darce choke that late into a fight. He lost via TKO to Julian Ars, Grant Dawson, and Devontae Smith before that, Grant Dawson being a unanimous decision. Then he has a TKO with a kick, TKO with punches before that. His first fight, we won via split decision. So, a lot more finishes for Julian Erosa. Looking back at Sung Woo Choi, his last 4 fights in the UFC, the last 2 were wins via unanimous decision. Before that, he started off with 2 losses to granted decent opponent, a unanimous decision loss to start, and then he got subbed by Gavin Tucker in the 3rd round of his 2nd fight. So I think if you think Julian Erosa is going to win the fight, I think you have to think it's going to be a finish. And if you think Sung Woo Choi is going to win, I think you think that it goes the distance.
Yeah, I love hearing that he's lost by submission before. It further solidifies my thinking, that he does have a weakness in that grappling realm. Really hoping Julian.
And he lost by submission late into the fight. So how about this for a call? I bet that Julian Erosa, I think Sung Woo Choi wins the 1st round, Julian Erosa wins the 2nd, and then submits Sung Woo Choi in the 3rd. That would be my prediction. Not a lot, but that's my prediction.
Fair enough. I'm rolling with you there, man. I like that logic, especially with that stamina management in previous fights. Connor, what do you got for us here? Who are you rolling with?
I mean, I tend to like fighters with an unorthodox style. It's something that, as an orthodox fighter, you definitely have to game plan for more. It's something they wouldn't really see, whether it be in sparring or anything leading up to it. Probably not something he saw in previous fights either. So I would like that. I like Erosa here, and I'm looking at this. The under for under 2.5 rounds is plus 120 on our book, Keith. And I'm leaning that way also. I think there's going to be a finish early one way or another, because with an unorthodox fighter, I think he's going to get caught with if he misses a looping jab.
Yeah.
If it goes the other way, I'm more confident on the under than on Erosa.
2.5 rounds, you can't really beat that because you have to win it with 2.5 minutes left in the fight. And if you're looking for a finish, ideally it happens before then. It's a really clear-cut win happens very easily for the guy that you're pulling for. But if you're just taking the under here, 2.5 minutes left in the fight, and you're looking for a finish, that's not a bad way to go. And that's usually a underdog pick. I don't know, just based on prior fight history, this could really come down to the wire. It could end up being a decision. I'll roll with you on the under there, 2.5 rounds. I'll take that as well. I like that pick. Good pick, Connor. That's why they call you the locksmith. So next, we got Davey Grant coming in at plus 275, and Marlon Vera coming in at minus 350. Huge disparaging lines in this fight. I still think it could go one way or the other, but let's hear what Tom has to say first.
I think this fight should be a lot closer to, maybe Marlon Vera minus 170 and Davey Grant maybe plus 145 or something like that, 150. I think it's a lot closer than those odds, are saying right there. However, these guys did fight before. It was back about 4 or 5 years ago. Davey Grant did win, but Marlon Vera has gotten a lot better, and he's gotten even better than Davey Grant has over the last period of time. There we go. Similar to Izzy Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, I think Marlon Vera is more improved over that time frame than Davey Grant is. Marlon Vera, he did win a round against Jose Aldo, and that is, he fought and he ultimately won against Sean O'Malley, and he fought to a decision loss in his 2 fights ago. He fought to a decision loss against Song Yadong, in which he actually probably won that fight. You give him the win over O'Malley, and O'Malley seems to say, oh, well, that's he only won that because he shut the nerve off in my leg. He hit it with his big toe. Well, at the end of the day, why are you not taking that away from him? It was a well-executed kick. It gave you a drop foot. Yeah, you can call it a freak thing all you want, but he still caused the freak thing. If you check the kick, it wouldn't have happened. So, O'Malley lost that fight, and and that's really just it. And then you come back and you split Aldo, you go into the third round, and Marlon Vera just gets out BJJ'd by Jose Aldo. But being a Brazilian, and a lot of people forget about his ground game because his striking game is so good. So that being said, I really think that Marlon Vera is going to win. However, with the odds the way they are, I think Davy Grant is a good underdog option here. Last few fights, he's actually knocked guys out. He can get hit, early in the round and then recover and then knock guys out later on into the fight. He did that with Martinez. He did that with Martin Day. He's on a 3-fight win streak. I think if you're looking for an underdog, I think Davy Grant, dangerous Davy Grant, is probably the guy to go with. However, I'm not betting on the fight, and I would think that Marlon Vera is going to win.
Yeah,
it's close.
Yeah, this is definitely way closer than the lines would have you believe, and I don't really know if I'm going to be watching this one personally. It's tough. It's really tough. I'm kind of a Sean O'Malley guy. I wouldn't say he's my favorite fighter like some of our previous guests have, but when you have Chito Vera win it like that, it is tough. I don't even know what to say about this one. It's like Davy Grant won it on the ground the last time. Chito Vera has definitely improved on the ground. Is Davy Grant going to go in there and try and out-wrestle Chito Vera this time again? Like, it's tough to say what's going to happen in this one. I think Davy Grant is a good underdog here, but I'm kind of feeling Marlon Vera. Who knows? Maybe he'll place another perfect kick on Davy Grant, just like he did on Sean O'Malley. Maybe that's like he's perfected that technique at this point. But you're right, Marlon Vera's gotten a lot better since the last time that these two fought. He's improved his ground game quite a bit, and he doesn't have as many holes in that aspect of his game as he used to. I don't know. Maybe they're looking to set up Chito Vera for a little bit of a streak, or a little bit of like a, look at him. He's doing way better now. And
well, think about it like this. Davy Grant is 35 years old. They fought in 2016. So that's, 5 years ago. So he was 30. And Marlon Vera's 28 now. So he was 23 at the time of the fight. Loses to Davy Grant. Since then, he then goes on to get a TKO victory. He goes on to have an armbar. He goes on to have a rear naked choke, 2 rear naked chokes. He's submitted guys before. There was an armbar earlier in his career, a triangle armbar, or an inverted triangle, as I call it. He's gotten better on the ground. His submission average is about 1 per every 15 minutes. So about 1, the length of a fight. Not too bad. That means you're controlling and you're throwing and you're being offensive on the ground, whether you're on the top or on the bottom. His takedown defense is at 37%. So I think he's going to be able to or keep Davy Grant off of him. And I think ultimately Marlon Vera training out of Jackson Wink Gym, especially having Clarissa Shields there, one of the best women boxers of all time, the GWOAT. Having her there, maybe his striking has gotten a little bit better. I think Marlon Vera is going to win. However, I don't think this fight is as, I don't think Davy Green said, what was he, plus 250?
275, even crazier.
Plus 275 on Tapology, Vera by 82%, only 18% on Grant. I don't think it's that drastic. So, if that line keeps moving to the plus 3s, I think I would definitely sprinkle a little bit on there.
Yeah, it's tough to pass up an underdog line like that, especially when it's not as disparaging as the lines would have you believe. I'm personally going to roll with Chito Vera here, probably throw him into a parlay. This is just a tough one to pick overall. Really tough one. Connor, who are you rolling with here?
So the lines I'm looking at here, they're updated on my book pretty frequently. It's pretty close to what Tom predicted at the beginning of talking about this fight. Marlon Vera minus 205, Davy Grant plus 165. Not far off from what Tom predicted. Now, that leads me to think that a lot of people probably betting, at least on this book, were taking the big money, like the big payout for Davy Grant, moving the lines closer. And then Marlon Vera, younger fighter, has quite a win streak going. I'm going to lean that way, probably throw it into parlay. That's what I would see here. An older fighter in Davy Grant, Like, I just don't like older fighters. That's just me. It might not be the wisest rationale for why I like Vera, but that's what it is.
Yeah, there's no denying that Cheeto Vera's gotten better since he fought Davy Grant the last time in 2016. He's improved significantly. I think that's why the lines are looking the way that they are right now. I definitely think that they're going to shift as time goes on and get closer to the fight. We'll see. You know, if we end up throwing this in there, we'll be tweeting it out to you. My blog will be up, and I'll let you know which way I'm leaning here, as will Tom. So, next up, this is Alexei Oleinik, plus 210, against Sergey Spivak, minus 250. I have one note. You know, I make notes for these videos ahead of time. I'll write a couple of lines, maybe even a paragraph. Sometimes I'll even have a full page for my points. And my point here, the two things I wrote are Oleinik is done, and Spivak is good at grappling, and that's Oleinik's strength. And then you look back at Oleinik's previous fights, and he couldn't even out-grapple guys that have been submitted before. Like, you look at Chris Daukaus, he has a couple of submission losses on his history, and Chris Daukaus just backed him into the cage and TKO'd him on his feet. You know, it wasn't like a knockout or a knockdown or anything. He just landed too many strikes that made the ref feel very uncomfortable and feel like he had to call the fight. It was absolute abuse of Alexei Oleinik by Chris Daukaus. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know how old Alexei Oleinik is, but if I had to guess, I'd say, 42?
99. No, he's 43. He is 43 years, 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days old. So at the time of the fight, he'll be basically 44.
Yeah, that's an old man in MMA. Credit to Oleinik for still going out there and attempting to get it done. But at this point, he's another one of those guys that's a name. He doesn't put on awful performances. I mean, the one against Daukaus was pretty bad. But he's still able to, like, go out there and give guys a little bit of a competition. I'm really rolling with Spivak here. You know, minus 250, definitely parlay bait. But Oleinik, I can't see him getting a win against a guy that's got the same, specialties as him, and might even be better on his feet than Oleinik too. So I'm rolling with Spivak here. It's tough to be 44 and get wins out here. You know, maybe they got to match him up against another old guy and give him a good send-off, because he's got over 50 wins, I believe, on his career.
49.
Oh, well.
59.
59. Okay, so almost 60. Who knows? Maybe he'll make it 60 on Saturday. But I just think at 44, unless you're fighting another 44-year-old man, it's really tough to pull out a win. Tom, what do you think?
Well, especially when the guy you're fighting is born in 1995 and you started your career in 1996. He's 59, 15, and 1. But listen, that being said, Alexei Oleinik has fought the top guys for so long, right? His last loss, he had Chris Daukaus, probably his worst performance. But before that, he was pinning Derek Lewis up against the cage. He was taking advantage of him on the ground until he got dropped with punches. Derek Lewis, guy can crack like almost no one we've ever seen before. Then he's got wins over Fabricio Verdum, Maurice Green. Both, one was a split decision, one was a submission with an armbar in January of 2020. So he was 42 then, still picking up wins. He has a loss against Walt Harris, 12 seconds, finished him. So, these are losses. Alistair Overeem, same thing. But these are losses to guys outside of Daukaus who have absolutely knockout power. Sergey Spivak, not really the same in terms of that one-punch KO power. Now, the question is that Daukaus fight the beginning of a trend, or is that, just a freak accident? That being said, Sergey Spivak definitely is a solid wrestler, or he's a Sambo technician, but is his wrestling and his bottom game particularly, is it really good? Because we've seen guys be old and have success. So the question is Sergey Spivak going to be able to keep Alexei Oleinik at distance? That's really what the question is, because if Sergey Spivak can only touch Alexei Oleinik with basically his knuckles or his feet, or his elbows or his knees, I think he's going to be in good position. But if Alexei Oleinik can take a punch or two, grab the arm drag into a back take, and eventually get you down on the ground, Sergey Spivak is going to have problems. And, ultimately, I think you're right. I think Sergey Spivak is going to be able to keep him at distance. I think he does get a TKO here. I think he does use the Sambo to not allow Alexei Oleinik, kind of use the Sambo as like anti-wrestling and keep it on the feet and strike with him. But Alexei Oleinik, he's kind of enticing as an underdog. I think one of these two underdogs, either the last fight or this fight, I think one of these two guys wins.
Yeah, I have a feeling one of them is going to win too. I just think when you look at, the disparity between Chito Vera and Davy Grant versus Oleinik and Spivak, I think Spivak's just, he's got the age advantage for sure. I also think Spivak is good enough of a wrestler to be able to compete with Oleinik in that realm. I could be proven wrong on Saturday, but I'm really feeling Spivak here. I think he's got the skills to put up with 44-year-old Alexei Oleinik. Connor, what are you thinking? I kind of have a feeling I know which way you're going to go here.
Yeah, Keith and I talked about it a little bit before getting on. I've said it previously for some of the undercard fights. I don't like the old guy. But now, before getting on, I was going to put this as my lock on Spivak. But all that Tom said made me a little less certain about this. That being said, I find it interesting. The over-under on rounds is at 1.5. The under is minus 162, over plus 132. So the fight's not going to be long from what Vegas is saying. Now, I'm still leaning Spivak here. I'm not going to put it as a lock, but I still think he's going to take it out, being Oleinik being 44, as you guys said, going to be 45 by the time this fight starts. I don't like that. He's taken a lot of punches. He's had 75 fights in his career, 59 of those being wins, but he got his head bashed in his last fight. I don't like that, and I'm rocking Spivak here. I don't like the age disparity. I like the younger fighter. And I don't know. It's going to be a short fight. I wouldn't take the under on rounds personally, but I like Spivak here. Not a lot, but I still like it.
Yeah, it is.
I was going to say, Connor, you actually convinced me that maybe this Sergey Spivak is a lock. Reason being is if Alexei Oleinik is going to win, I see it being by either a decision or by a submission. And I don't think Sergey Spivak is going to be submitted in that short of a time frame. However, Alexei Oleinik has gotten knocked out by powerful guys, and his last fight was against Dukakis, who's not that powerful, and still TKO'd him inside of 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So yeah, I think Spivak, he can crack, don't get me wrong. He just doesn't have that one punch KO power, but being younger, he's definitely going to have the better gas tank. I think Sergey Spivak might be a lock now after hearing that Vegas set the line at that time frame. Considering I don't see how Alexei Oleinik can win in the under, I think probably Sergey Spivak might be a lock. I'm definitely going to pick him, though.
Yeah, I like that logic, too. I'm like semi-lock over here with Spivak, especially after hearing that underline. 1.5 as opposed to a fight we spoke about earlier, Juliana Rosa versus Sung Woo Choi. That one was at 2.5, and those guys have a lot of knockouts and submissions under their belt. So, maybe Vegas knows something here that we don't necessarily know. And, I think maybe this is a setup fight to kind of throw Spivak out there against a reputable name that everybody in the UFC world knows. So next up, we have the main event. Jung Chang Sun, better known as the Korean Zombie, versus Dan 50K Ige. They're both coming in at minus 110 across the board. You want to talk about a pick'em fight? Those are pick'em fight odds. I don't even know who I'm leaning with yet, so I'm going to flip it over to Tom again, and Tom's going to either sway me one way or have such a weak argument, I'm going to go with the other guy, but I think it'll be the former, not the latter.
The former, that means I'm going to have a good argument, right? Okay.
Yes.
That's what it better mean. Listen, Dan Ige, he is fighting out of Extreme Couture. We said at the beginning of the fight. Jesus. We said at the beginning of the show. The Korean Zombie, known Why is he called the Korean Zombie, you ask? Oh, interesting you asked that. Yeah, that made sense, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So his name is a zombie because he's known for eating punches and still coming forward. He's a counter striker who's going to go out there and take a couple. He'll take 2 of yours to return 1 of his because he believes that his power is there and that he has the chin to do so. He also has a great submission game. He's responsible for the first ever twister inside the UFC. But he's long removed from that guy. He does have wins over Frankie Edgar, but he had a loss to Brian Ortega in which Brian Ortega thoroughly outclassed him. Now, granted, it was Brian Ortega, but that was the first Brian Ortega we had seen in years, and he immediately got a title shot out of that. So it does beg the question, hey, was that a great showing by Brian Ortega, or was that a bad showing by Chan Sung Jung, and it made Brian Ortega look that good? I'm not really sure, but Chan Sung Jung, he's a guy who's going to walk forward and take shots and look to counter-strike you, and he'll take a couple more, and he'll use his jiu-jitsu if he has to. How long are you able to walk through punches? This guy's been in some wars. He's taken big damage. That's why you don't get the nickname zombie without taking a ton of damage. At 35 years old, 34, 35 years old, he did have 2 years off to be in the Army back in Korea. He did keep training during all of that, but, that time off, not going to be kind to a fighter. And we haven't seen him rise to such prominence, really have like great fights after, coming back. Dan 50K Ige, he's a guy who is, generally speaking, going to a lot of decisions. He's got a TKO win over Gavin Tucker. So he's shown, definitely some increased power as of late. Fought with Calvin Kattar, and listen, Calvin Kattar, maybe not the top echelon Max Holloway level, but that's absolutely the top of the division. Fought to an 84 unanimous decision against him, but it was a solid fight, a solid showing. I think he's only gotten better since then. He's a little bit younger. Listen, this guy, he beat Edson Barboza. I don't think he actually beat Edson Barboza. However, even to make it close with Edson Barboza, considering his last few fights, I think says a lot about Dan Ige. Also, I think we're talking about setup fights. I think this is going to be really a setup fight for Dan Ige. Put him into prominence, get him at the top of the division. He's deserved it. He's got big wins. He's been in the division for a long time. He looks good. He's got, his takedown defense is pretty solid. Not that I think the Korean Zombie is going to try, maybe in a late round attempt. But, I'll go. He's a father, so he's got dad strength coming into this as well. I think if he can, maybe coerce the Korean Zombie into coming in, he can land a counter. So kind of counter-strike the counter-striker, and just don't let the Korean Zombie build up. You don't let him get too many hits on him. And I think age plays a factor. Generally the same reach and the same body type. I'm rolling with Extreme Couture. So I'm going with the 29-year-old Dan 50K Ige.
Yeah, I'm going to roll with you there. Your argument, it was solid. Thank you. I kind of had an idea that I was going to go with Ige going into this one. And you mentioned the improvements or their performances over their last couple of fights. Yeah, the Korean Zombie looked really bad against Brian Ortega. Obviously, Brian Ortega, current coach on The Ultimate Fighter, he's going to fight for the belt against Alexander Volkanovski at the end of the season. But the Korean Zombie was once a name, once a reputable guy, and that's why this is a setup fight for Ige, because not as many people really are aware of who Ige is yet at this point. And then you look at Ige's previous fights, one-punch KOs. He's developed this strength out of nowhere, and it's pretty much remarkable. Maybe you can attribute that to the birth of his kid. Who knows? I don't know when his kid was born, but if it was like right before that last fight, then yeah, he developed that dad strength.
This will be his first fight as a father.
Oh, even better. Maybe he's even stronger now coming into this one. Plus, this will be a stand-up fight for the most part. You mentioned maybe the Korean Zombie goes for a later submission, but I think that this will be a 5-round stand-up fight, a brawl very similar to what we saw with Cody Garbrandt and Rob Font. A lot of footwork, which, if you look at footwork, Dan Ige has the better footwork. His feet just move around, and, he will entice the Korean Zombie to come in there and throw something that really doesn't benefit him as much. And Dan Ige is just going to bounce around and like kind of run circles around the Korean Zombie for 5 rounds. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But you can't deny that one punch KO power that he's been showing as of late. And if this is going to be a fight on the feet for the most part, that's going to play a huge factor for Dan Ige. I really like him here, especially after your argument. I was kind of in the middle, but I'm going with Ige. Connor, what are you thinking?
So before we start talking about this fight, I was thinking, here, I'm going to be stubborn, not listen to what either of you have to say, and sway me away from going solely based on the cool nickname as the Korean Zombie. But based on what you've been saying, I don't like the older fighters. He's eating a lot of punches. That's how he got the nickname. Now we got Ige with the dad strength. I love the dad strength. And I saw the over-under set at 4.5 rounds. It's probably going to go the distance. No, I'm not saying take that either way. I'm leaning towards Ige here. I think that's going to be my pick for this fight. Dad strength alone, younger fighter. Now with a kid, a lot more to fight for. And I think it's going to give him it's not like, all right, he has girlfriend, wife, whatever the situation is. Yeah, he had that before, but with a kid, it gives you a lot more motivation. You see it across all sports and basketball. Fred VanVleet had his best games in the postseason after he took a game off for the birth of his kid, went on a crazy streak when they won the chip. Now it's a different sport, obviously, but I like the birth of the kid, it being his first fight since then, and dad's strength playing a factor here. I'm going with Ige.
All right, so we're all rolling with Ige. And yeah, you did mention one point that I really agree with there. He's called the Korean Zombie because he can eat so many punches. Well, you can only eat so many punches for so long until it starts to take an impact on your chin. Guys, do you have any last-minute things that you want to say before we wrap this episode up?
Yeah, let's just run through our picks again. So I have Chaos Williams. I have Diego Lima. I have Wellington Turman. I have Julian Erosa. I have Marlon Vera, Sergey Spivak, and Dan 50K. I always fuck it up. Dan 50K Ige.
So all of our picks are the same there, actually, except I do want to add in my prelim fight. You had Chaos Williams. I'll be tailing you on that one. I wasn't too sure going in, but your argument definitely swayed me. I'm also going to be taking Casey O'Neill, the very first fight of these prelim fights. So, Connor, I think you sided with us on all those as well.
Yeah, I sided with all those fights. I don't have Tom's prelim undercard fight written down for me. I said I wasn't going to touch that, and I'm adding in the under on the Lima fight.
Okay, I like that.
So I'm going Spivak, Vera, Lima, Erosa, O'Neill under on Lima, and 50K Ige.
All right. Hopefully Ige can make us 50K. I won't be throwing as much, to be able to make that, but we'll see. Minus 110. That's 110 to win 100. So you want to win 50K, you're going to have to throw a significant amount of money there. Guys, thanks for joining us tonight. All you viewers at home, we really appreciate all of your support. Not if you haven't liked and subscribed yet. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, you better do that now. All right? It's not a question at this point. You better like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'm not going to say we're going to find you because that might come across as a threat, but we'll do something. We'll expose you on social media or something, or we'll hack your computer and find all those pictures you've been hiding from the federal government. Make sure you check out _Pickin Winners on Instagram and Twitter for the overarching Pickin Winners brand. You check out @Pickin Fights on Instagram for Tom and I for this show. If you're interested in being a guest at any point, you're watching this at home right now, you're saying, hey, I know more than these two guys, or they seem pretty cool and I would like to join on at some point, DM us on any of our platforms, and we would be more than willing to at least entertain you in the DMs, more so than that girl you've been DMing for the past couple of weeks after your nights at the bar. Thank you for joining us. If you hate us, you love us. Oh, yes. Tom has something to say.
I'm changing my pick to Matt Brown over Diego Lima.
Oh, last-minute pick. Well, if you stuck around this long and watched the end of the video, you just found out which way Tom is picking. I hope you watched this long. Matt Brown. All right.
And if he doesn't win, we'll just clip this part out And if he does win, I'll make sure I add it in. So I got all my bases covered, baby.
Absolutely. Waiting until the end for those last-minute picks. You know what? I'm going to switch all my picks too, and then that way we can do the same thing.
I had the idea first.
Okay, well, then I won't do it.
Have
Listen,
your own speed.
you love us, you hate us, you think our picks are stupid, brilliant, we made you money, or we lost you money. We want to hear it all down in the comments below. All right? The only way that this show is going to keep getting better and better is if you like, subscribe, and comment. So thank you for joining us. Tom, Connor, have a great night. Take it easy, as always.
Always.